Hello, my name is Michael Renahan from the Intensive English Language Program here at Moraine Valley Community College in Palos Hills, Illinois. And today I'm going to be discussing mastering complex sentences. So, being able to recognize and use subordinating conjunctions is essential to understanding and creating complex arguments and thoughts. We use subordinating conjunctions in business contracts, negotiations, persuasion, technical writing, and many other genres. As a college student, you will often be asked to create complex pieces of work. In this section, the goal is to gain familiarity with common subordinating conjunctions which can be used to produce complex work. So a subordinating conjunction is simply a word that joins other words, phrases, and clauses. Words such as because, even though, while, that, until, before, when, and unless are examples of subordinating conjunctions. So here's an example. Unless there is a snow day tomorrow, we will meet at the college. I sometimes check my phone even though I know I should not. A subordinating conjunction must be paired with a separate independent clause to avoid making a sentence fragment error. So, for example, I enjoy coffee because it warms me up on a cold day. So I have I enjoy coffee, that's the main clause, and then the subordinating conjunction because goes with the subordinating clause, because it warms me up on a cold day. So the two things together form a complete sentence. If I were just to say, because it warms me up on a cold day, that's an example of a sentence fragment because there's no independent or main clause. So here's a list of just some of the common subordinating conjunctions, and you probably know many of them already. So after and although, as if, as though, as soon as, because, before, even though, if, in order to, now that, provided, rather than, since, so that, supposing, that, though, unless, until, when, whenever, wherever, whether, which, while, who, whom, whoever, or why. All of those things can be common subordinating conjunctions. When we punctuate a sentence with a subordinating conjunction, we just kind of have to be careful that we avoid making a fragment, and that's the most common mistake that a student would make. So, for example, if we describe a complex sentence, it is a main clause and at least one dependent clause. And dependent clauses, or subordinate clauses as they're called, can be signaled by subordinate conjunctions. So, for example, an independent clause would be, I saw a pretty flower. A dependent clause might be, while I was walking to class. Now, that's not a complete sentence. While I was walking to class is not complete. I can say, I saw a pretty flower while I was walking to class. That would be a complex sentence because we have the subordinating conjunction while, and then we have the main clause, I saw a pretty flower. Note that the sentence should be reduced when the dependent clause and the main clause contain the same subject. So, I saw a pretty flower while I was walking to class. Most of your instructors in COM 101 and other courses will say that's a bit wordy because the subject is repeated twice. It's better just to reduce it and say, I saw a pretty flower while walking to class. A comma is generally used when a dependent clause occurs in initial position or in the beginning of a sentence. So, because the weather is getting warmer, comma, the flowers are beginning to bloom. So we're going to put a comma after warmer, which is the end of the dependent clause and just before the subject of the main clause. The flowers are beginning to bloom because the weather is getting warmer. Notice that we did not put a comma in front of because here. We don't need one when it is in the final position. Now, sentence fragments occur often when the writer uses a subordinating conjunction and does not connect it to an independent clause, as I mentioned earlier. So, for example, Because I enjoy being outside on such a nice day is an incomplete thought. We have because starting the sentence, and we don't have a main clause. Because I enjoy being outside on such a nice day, comma, I think I will go for a walk around campus is the correct answer. Okay? Such as books, pencils, and calculators. Again, that's incorrect. Correct would be, I need supplies such as pencils, books, and calculators for math class. We corrected it by adding an independent clause. Okay? Sentence fragments also occur when the writer does not complete a thought. Most of these errors can be avoided by adding a subject, a finite verb, or both. So for example, the sun was shining and the birds were chirping when all of a sudden. Well, all of a sudden what? We have to finish that off. Because it was early and I was tired. This one needs both a subject and a verb. Running in the morning, swimming after school, and lifting weights in the evening. We don't have a verb in that sentence, so we have to correct it by putting in some sort of a verb. Running, swimming, and lifting weights don't work as verbs. They're working as gerunds, or kind of nouns that look like verbs but are not actually verbs. So, okay, so some common mistakes that students make. Number one is using because at the beginning of a sentence and not connecting it to another sentence. So I tell students often it's much easier to punctuate a sentence containing because when because comes in the second or final position in the sentence. Okay, so for example, I think it is a bad situation, period, because there will not be fresh water to drink. That's incorrect. I can put them together, however, and say, I think it's a bad situation because there will not be any fresh water to drink. That would be correct. Common mistake number two is using more than one conjunction, and I see this one quite a bit actually. So we have, for example, although she went to tutoring, but I'm not sure she has